Mr. Phillips.
Thank you for the opportunity to give our perspective of the Loophole Bill. The bill has three distinctive components, each of which need to be considered in isolation. The three are the OHS and related issues, and we fully support the amendments by Senators Pocock and Lambie to split these issues from the bill. It's common sense. Second area is the traditional industrial relations issues. These include items relating to casuals, labour hire, power of unions and so on. These are the sorts of issues you'd expect to see in industrial relations legislation. The third area is the grabbing of commercial contracts, turning them into employment contracts, then regulating such contracts as employment. It is this area that concerns us and to which I shall focus my comments. As the OHS issues are split from the bill, so too should the IR and commercial contract issues be split from it. The public policy and legal issues between these two are so massively different that to seek to move them as one is to create a huge confusion and to fail to understand what is at stake. In seeking to turn a commercial contract into an employment contract, the Loophole Bill intrudes into and turns upside down competition law, tax law, trust law and corporations law at least. The more that this bill is understood in its detail, the more the flow and impacts are comprehended and the more startling this becomes. The bill clearly intends to override competition law and the authority of the ACCC. There are specific provisions in the bill that do this. The bill makes no reference to tax, trust or corporations law. It would appear that these issues have not been contemplated in the drafting of the bill. If this chunk of the bill were to proceed, tax, trust and corporations law will require amendments. Our position is clear. All of these sections of the bill should be rejected. I provide a list of the sections we have identified as requiring rejection. We ask ourselves as to why the bill seeks to turn the commercial contract into an employment contract and regulate commercial transactions as employment. After all, the effect of this is the greatest assault against small business people that Australia has ever seen. It is literally the destruction of small business by legislative dictate. It removes from Australians their right to be self-employed, to be their own boss. The immediate impact is on the 1.2 million self-employed people in Australia, plus the 970,000 Australians who seek to use gig work as top-up income. The only answer that we can see is that the bill is born from a particular mindset. That mindset holds that Australians are so immature, inept and incompetent that we cannot be trusted or allowed to earn our income by using the commercial contract. The bill is a legislative destruction about the very declaration about the very nature of our very humanity, a direct declaration that we Australians are forever childlike and never capable of making life's decisions for ourselves. Yet our society and law hold that all adult Australians have the maturity, competency and capacity to engage in commercial transactions, to buy a home, take out a mortgage for hundreds of thousands of dollars, buy cars and so on and so on. It's called the economy. And there are highly developed laws, institutions and processes to ensure that those transactions are conducted with maximum fairness. And an economy is nothing more than millions of people engaging in commercial contract transactions. It is a right we all enjoy. Yet this bill seeks to deny that right to Australians in the earning of our incomes. We ask that these sections of the bill be rejected.
Mr. John, yeah. Thank you all for appearing today. I've only got 5 minutes, so Mr Phillips, I'll go to you. You've made some very strong comments. Could you give us very briefly, your experience and your expertise? You've covered so many areas: small business, ACCC, Tax Act, corporations law, trust law.
We formed Self-Employed Australia in 2000, primarily to leverage against the ATO and their bad treatment of self-employed small business people. And we've had a long engagement and constructive engagement with the ATO, although I may say it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. I went to the ILO in 2003 and 2006 to Geneva to the discussions there on this very issue, 3 weeks each time, and all of this discussion here in relation to this is very replicative of the discussion there at the ILO. I principally was the person who started the leveraging for the unfair contract laws. We started that in 2009. It was a 7-year campaign. We got the first lot of those through in 2006, I've got to say, with cross-party political support, and then the upgrading of those, which happened yesterday, which I think is a fabulous day for small business people across Australia and the economy, where real teeth came to those laws. And I've got to say, in advocating for those very strongly, we were strongly opposed by the big end of town. And I can go through and name the associations that I had, the organisations I had stand-up arguments with. In a lot of respects, I consider myself, or ourselves, big business's worst nightmare, because we really do leverage against them for the rights of self-employed people. Okay,
I can see that, because a lot of the Tax Act, the corporations law, the competition law, the trust law is set up for big business. I can see that, so you've got your fight on there. You've said publicly, I believe, that this is the most radical change to industrial relations ever in this country.
I don't. The section of the bill that we're referring to, or the sections of the bill, this big chunk.
3 sections.
I don't mind people having the debates over industrial relations. It's quite a traditional debate, and that's fine. It's not my area that I like to get involved in. But this bill does something that we have never before seen in Australia. It takes the commercial contract and treats that and declares it to be an employment contract. The implications of that are just incredible. And the more you sit and contemplate that and understand this bill in its detail and what it is doing, it does cut across the powers of the ACCC. It interferes in and sets the Fair Work Commission up as a competitor to the competition regulator. It interferes with tax law. It interferes with trust law. It interferes with corporations law in ways that are just quite staggering, and none of this has been highlighted, none of this has been thought through, and in that respect this is something that is really exceedingly radical.
Thank you. Now, the Fair Work Act itself, I think you've had experience in industrial relations.
I'd like to say I've had experience in non-industrial relations. I find the whole area of industrial relations mind-boggling in terms of trying to comprehend it. It's like trying to comprehend the Tax Act.
Well, as I understand it, the Fair Work Act has gone from 650 or 80 pages to now around 1,200, and it's now heading for 1,700. How a worker, how a small business can possibly fathom that is beyond me. I can't fathom it at all. So what do you think is needed instead of what you're proposing?
Well, the first thing that's required with the self-employed area, so what we would say is take the whole section, this big chunk that we've referred to, and reject it. And we need to move forward with protections through commercial law and through the commercial space for self-employed small business people. So those protections that we need, I've just said that the unfair contract laws with teeth are a massive leap forward, and we have to see how those go. first thing we have to do is that the government departments are exempt from the unfair contract laws. So they can engage independent contractors, an IT contractor, a cleaner, and impose on them unfair contracts. We need to include the government departments in that, and there's an amendment that can be put through quite easily to do that. We need to move forward with security of payment laws, particularly in the tradies area, people who get consistently screwed over, and notice Senator Pocock here, very familiar with the John Murray review. That needs to be implemented.
Mr Phillips, I'm just mindful that some of these things you're raising are not being dealt with in this legislation, so we've got a limited amount of time.
I'm responding to Senator
respect
Roberts'
that, but if you
question.
keep your answers as short as possible, I respect you being respectful to Senator Roberts, which is understandable and appropriate. But if you can keep them short.
So there are other areas around, just said security of payment laws, and so on and so forth, and all of these are within the commercial space. So there's a need for additional protections for small business, self-employed people, but it can and must be done through the commercial area. You don't protect someone by destroying their business, and that's what this bill does.
My time's up. Thank you very much, Mr.
Sorry, Senator.
No, I can see my time's up.
Thank you, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Senator
Mr Phillips, I know in your submission you state that this bill will make illegal a huge percentage of small businesses in Australia. I'm interested if you could explain that claim.
So it starts at the definitions. So the first thing that the bill does is overrides the High Court's common law definition of the commercial contract, self-employment, independent contracting, so it overrides that. The second thing it does is then it introduces this new term for I understand the Industrial Relations Act, called a services contract. It then says that a contract for services, the commercial contract, is a services contract. It then takes the services contract term, uses it throughout the entire bill to regulate those contracts. So what it does by definition is take the contract through which I, as a self-employed person, and everyone else who is self-employed, and says that that contract is now an employment contract, and for the purposes of the Fair Work Act, I am no longer self-employed, I am an employee. It is literally, by statute, the destruction of our right to be self-employed. That is literally what it does in the definition.
Thank you. I'll certainly take it up with the department to see clarity on that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Good, thank you. Senator Still.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to make a declaration to everyone on the panel, and I see you smiling, Mr Phillips, because you know I'm going to be asking you questions, that Mr Phillips and I have had many conversations over the years, but I want you to understand that I am 3 generations truck drivers. I was self-employed. I'm not making up questions as we go. I grew up at the hip of my father on his truck, as my son has with his father. So when I talk about the road transport industry, I get excited when people really involve themselves in my industry. So, Mr Phillips, I'm sorry I hadn't heard of Self-Employed Australia before yesterday, but as soon as I saw your name I realised where you were coming from. And I have no problem with people having differences of opinions. It's healthy for our democracy. But I got on your website to try and see who's who. So, Mr Phillips, how many members do you have? No names, no backdrill.
Every time I get before this committee, and it's been a number of times, I get asked the same question.
I'm still trying to find out.
and I think we've had friendly, respectful engagement over many years. And we are a very open book. You'll see on our website how open we are. So I'm anticipating other questions on this. We are required to make a yearly report to the Consumer Affairs in Victoria, where we're registered, and you can look up there and you can see that report. Our membership numbers at the moment, I think, are about 900 or thereabouts.
Right, okay, let's look at that. That's great. Now, in terms of your transport interest now with owner-drivers, and I want to put this on the record, you keep referring back to the old RSRT, which is gone. The RSRT I thought was a wonderful thing. The order was a shocker. I don't even need to go there. But in your submission, you make some wild assumptions that this is the RSRT coming back. Where is your proof? Not just assumptions, your proof.
In reading the legislation and having had the experience with the RSRT, in having put submissions in, I think, when the RSRT was being considered in 2011, where we put in submissions, and they're on our website, where we warned about this. In my view, there is just no question at all that the owner-driver provisions in this bill are worse than the RSRT.
Okay, look, I'm not going to keep going on because I couldn't be further from where I sit, because I still talk a lot to transport. But you had a thing on your website and you referred to Trucking Billionaires Business Boost about this legislation. I'll just run these organisations past you if I can. Indulge, Chair, indulge me.
Yeah, I can indulge you for one more question. Sorry,
okay, this will be last one. This will be last one. Australian Road Transport Industrial Organisation, Australian Trucking Association, Road Freight New South Wales, South Australian Road Transport Association, National Road Transport Association, Transport Workers Union, National Road Freighters Australia, Victorian Transport Association, Queensland Trucking Association, Tasmanian Transport Association, Northern Territory Road Train Association, Western Roads Federations. They cover thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses in the Australian road transport industry, are all screaming out for this bill to be passed. What makes you more of an expert than them in the road transport industry?
Senator, I can refer to our submission where I draw on Rod Sims, who made reference to the arrangements between the Transport Workers Union and Toll for the Toll to act against, for the TWU to act against Toll's competitors and to put them under pressure to put them out of business. Rod Sims had I think, an 18-month investigation when he was ACCC chair.
You're not answering my question, Mr. Phillips. We're running out of time. What makes you more an expert than them?
What I'm quoting to you, Senator, is the authority of Rod Sims in his concerns expressed about the provisions under the industrial relations system with owner-drivers to enable collusion, price fixing and market rorting. So I will refer back to Rod Sims.
Am I going to get shut up?
Yeah, I have to go across, but I am very interested if you could actually give the transcript of what Mr Sims said, because it's not accurate what you just described, Mr Phillips. I'm handing over to Senator Grogan. I'm not taking any more of my time up. Senator Grogan.
Thank you. I would have a million questions, but I don't think we'd get anywhere, Mr Phillips, so I'm not going to use up my time there either.
For your evidence today, and thank you for your patience as well. If you take any questions on notice, could you please return the answers to the Secretariat by the 24th of November 2023, and have a good afternoon.